In the late 1980s, Kenya struggled under the suffocating weight of corruption and fear. President Daniel Arap Moi ruled with an iron fist, and power flowed through secret pacts, betrayals, and self-serving alliances. Amid this darkness rose a man of rare grace and brilliance, Dr. Robert John Ouko, a Luo statesman whose integrity shone like a candle in a storm. Born in 1931 in Kisumu, Ouko was the embodiment of the Kenyan dream. Self-made, visionary, and fiercely patriotic. Educated at Makerere University and the University of Nairobi, he became one of the nation's sharpest economists, a voice of reason in a sea of greed. To many, he was the conscience of government. To Arap Moi, a trusted lieutenant and the eloquent face of Kenya abroad. But in the Kenyan corridors of power, loyalty was a fragile illusion. Behind Robert Ouko's warm smile and polished diplomacy, envy and fear brewed. The KANU regime had no space for men whose integrity surpassed that of their masters. Ouko's descent began quietly, in the shadow of a project meant to bring prosperity, the Kisumu molasses plant. Once a beacon of industrial hope in western Kenya, it became a cesspool of corruption, choked by greed and mismanagement. As Minister for Industry, Ouko had fought to revive it, partnering with Italian and Swiss firms such as BAK International, led by Domenico Iraghi and Marianne Briner-Mattern. When the project collapsed, so did trust, and whispers began to spread that Ouko held a dossier exposing high-level theft. At the heart of these whispers stood a powerful but paranoid man, Nicholas Biwott, Moi's closest ally, a man feared and revered, known as Total Man. Their relationship, once cordial, was now poisoned by suspicion. In public, Biwott praised Ouko. In private, jealousy and paranoia flared. Then came the Washington trip, January 27th to February 4th, 1990. Moi's delegation of 83 top officials traveled to the U.S. for a national prayer breakfast. Ouko, dignified and articulate, shone in the eyes of American diplomats. But back home, the narrative shifted. Rumors claimed he had secretly met President George H.W. Bush, an act that, if true, would be political suicide. Though records later proved the story false, it planted a deadly seed of mistrust in Moi's circle. When Ouko returned home on February 4, 1990, he was a haunted man. Exhausted, he retreated to his quiet farm in Koru, seeking peace among the rolling hills of Muhoroni. But peace had already abandoned him. Unfamiliar Peugeot cars lurked near his home. Strangers whispered his name in markets. His wife, Christabel, received anonymous calls, "Tell your husband to watch his steps." Even his mistress, Harine Vilas Ogambo, was threatened. His security detail was suddenly reduced. He confided to friends that he felt hunted. By February 12th, Ouko was a man living on borrowed time. In the early hours of February 13, 1990, silence wrapped Koru like a shroud, until it shattered. At 3 a.m., Selina Ndalo, Ouko's housemaid, was jolted awake by the thunderous slam of a door. Through her window, she glimpsed a white Peugeot racing into the darkness, its headlights cutting through mist like knives. Moments earlier, Ouko had leapt from bed, heart pounding. Outside, boots crunched on gravel. 4 or 6 men, dressed in military fatigues, faces hidden behind balaclavas, stormed through the back door. These were not mere burglars, they were instruments of the state. Ouko tried to flee but was struck down, a brutal blow shattering his right leg. The crack of bone echoed like a death knell. "Please, tell me what I have done," he gasped as they dragged him away, blood streaking the floor. The Peugeot convoy sped off into the night, led by government vehicles, one belonging to Nyanza Provincial Commissioner Julius Kobia. Witnesses would later place Nicholas Biwott and Hezekiah Oyugi, the feared permanent secretary for internal security, in the vicinity. The drive to Nakuru State House Lodge, a fortified presidential retreat, took 3 agonizing hours. By dawn, Ouko was delivered into the belly of power. What happened next remains one of the darkest chapters in Kenya's history. Inside a dim basement room, Ouko was stripped and beaten. His cries echoed through concrete walls as fists and clubs rained down. "Mzee, I am your friend. I have done nothing," he begged. But mercy had fled that room. According to chilling accounts from former special branch officers, Moi watched from the shadows, his face carved in betrayal, while Biwott paced like a vengeful caged animal. When Ouko refused to confess to fabricated charges of treason and corruption, torture escalated. Pliers twisting fingers, a heated poker searing flesh. By morning, Ouko was broken but unbowed. His final prayer was for his family. Then a single gunshot tore through the silence. Nicholas Biwott's Beretta pistol, pressed to his temple, ended his misery. Dr. Robert Ouko was dead. His killers wrapped his body in a tarpaulin and drove back to Koru. There, at Gadalila Hill, they dumped him in a shallow gully. Diesel was poured over his lifeless form, his possessions arranged to mimic a suicide. They lit the fire and left his body to burn. At 1 p.m., a clueless local herdsboy named Joseph Shikuku stumbled upon the smoldering remains, the charred shell of a man who had once carried Kenya's hope. The nation woke to grief and fury, streets filled with whispers of murder. Under pressure from a shocked public, Moi invited Scotland Yard's John Troon to investigate. Troon's report, delivered in August 1990, confirmed what Kenyans already knew. Ouko was murdered. His evidence pointed to powerful figures, Biwott, Oyugi, and others in Moi's inner circle. Yet justice was a mirage. The Gicheru Commission was formed and swiftly disbanded. Key suspects were detained, then released. Witnesses died mysteriously. Files vanished. Only one man, District Commissioner Jonah Nguka, faced trial. He was acquitted and fled to exile, his book Absolute Power proclaiming innocence. Over the years, Ouko's death became a ghost story whispered in Kenya's political corridors. Committees were formed, dissolved, revived, and buried again. Biwott, always defiant, sued journalists and won. Moi lived and died without ever answering for the blood spilled in Nakuru's State Lodge basement. When Nicholas Biwott died in 2017 and Moi followed in 2020, they carried their secrets to the grave. But truth does not die. In 2023, former intelligence officer James Kwitenge reignited the embers, confirming what many long believed, that Ouko's execution was a state crime, ordered to silence a man too honest for a corrupt regime. More than 3 decades later, the memory of Dr. Robert John Ouko endures, a wound that never healed, a mirror reflecting Kenya's struggle between conscience and corruption. He was a patriot who believed in his country and was betrayed by it. His story is not just history. It is a requiem for truth and a cry for a nation still haunted by the smoke that rose over Gadalila Hill and briefly prevailed over Nairobi on June 25, 2024.